I'm Ozzy Dahlstrom. I'm with the Diverse Emerging Music Organization, a nonprofit that just does stuff like this for the music industry. And welcome, everybody. We're talking artist management tonight with a distinguished panel. If you all wouldn't mind, just who are you and what's your connection with artist management?
I'm Carrie Gribble. I've managed 3 bands. I don't really do it much anymore. I do music licensing and booking still. And I licensed the current CD, and I actually booked Are You Local at Vitamins, come to First Avenue on Thursday. It's going to be a fun event. And been in the music scene for a very long time. I was a radio DJ and worked at Twin Tone as a publicist there. So now I freelance and work on TV shows and commercials and whatnot too.
Who did you manage?
Revolver Model, Phantom Tales, and then co-managed Chasing 3000.
Thanks.
My name is Dana Strauss, and I am a local booking agent, but we work with national acts. I work at ARM Entertainment, which stands for Artist Representation and Management. However, we're mostly a booking agency, but with the style bands that we manage, they manage themselves and they look at us to help manage and just kind of direct them in the right path. But I've been doing that since I graduated here at McNally's in 06, so I'm good however long that is. Too long.
Who's on Armstrong Street?
Oh, we represent Bret Michaels of Poison and Dokken, Warrant, Tully Guns, Firehouse, Eric Martin of Mr. Big, Frank Cannon of Tesla, Kip Winger and Winger. We got a little bit of country and a little bit of 90s pop rock with Fastball.
Oh, okay.
I'm Cody Hughes. I am the owner/operator of the management. I basically managed the Goondas for 5 years, 5.5 years. They've been my primary band essentially. Prior to that was the group called the Dizzies, lived in Ellsworth, Wisconsin. No one knows them, really. That was kind of my kickoff into music. I've also worked with Red Daughters and Buildings.
Cool.
What was the last group you?
Red Daughters and Buildings.
Okay, well, let's start with the number one question that I always hear about artist managers. What does an artist manager do?
What don't they do?
Right.
Well, and that's, I guess that's the point. So let's talk about all that encompasses artist management. I guess it's just a list of duties, right? I guess what an artist manager does is sort of related to how you know you need an artist manager. So how would a band, how does a band know they need a manager?
Well, I think when you're to that status and you don't want to do the things behind the scenes,
Which things, though?
well, let's see. Advancing shows, talking to promoters, booking the shows, promoting the shows, transportation, all that kind of stuff.
As far as career planning. When it's just the general goal of I want to be rich and famous.
Well, if you can put money in your pocket, then maybe you can put money in a manager's pocket.
So
But until
they should
then,
already be making money before they need a
definitely,
manager.
unless they're doing it pro bono, and as a friend or something.
I have kind of a different outlook. I mean,
Go for it.
the reason I got into management would title what I do, I guess. I was basically friends with 2 of the Goondas in college and just started hanging out, going to shows, helping them load in, load out, bullshit, sell t-shirts, whatever. And it kind of was joking, like, do you want to be our manager? I said, yeah, sure. Kind of just worked out that way.
You knew what that meant when they asked you.
Yeah, I was
Because it was the
familiar.
stuff you were already
Yeah, it
doing.
was basically stuff I'm already doing. Like, I like these dudes, I like what they're doing, like, I want to help them. From my perspective, I've never made a dime doing what I'm doing or what I did. It's been just more of a passion kind of drive. Like, I want to support what these guys are doing. I want people to know, what they have going on.
Well, I think that starting as knowing, being friends with somebody again, is probably, that's one of the more common ways I hear about managers getting started.
Well, definitely that's how I got my feet wet, doing it for little to no money too, with a band called Scarlet Haze that was local.
Oh, sure.
But you do it because of the passion, and when you start out. But as an artist, I feel if you can't find that right person to help you take it to the next step, then I would find the person that's most passionate about your music to manage it.
Oh, yeah.
I saw Revolver perform, and I liked them, and I was actually working with Sonia, I think, at the door. She needed help at a Turf Club show, a First Ave show, and the guitarist came up to me and was like, "Hey, don't you work in the music industry?" And I was like, "Oh, weird." And we went out for lunch, and as he was telling me about their path and where they wanted to take it, he went to the bathroom, and as he was in the bathroom, I was thinking, I think I could manage this band, I think I want to, and he came back and asked me. And so it just worked, and they were a band that actually listened to what I suggested, and they were really fashionable, and every photo shoot they looked beautiful, and they had every different kind of audience member you can imagine in the crowd. So they were somewhat, I mean, they were a little bit harder to get in because the guitarist was doing all the work, and he didn't want to do it anymore. So that's why he wanted a manager. But the other ones were like, "Whoa, what do we need somebody else telling us what to do?" And he's like, "You weren't helping, you weren't doing it." And then they realized that when I started, I got them more money, I got them better profile gigs, and they got on a different path than they were on before. And that's what I like about working with baby bands, is because you can take them to the next level and they can feel more appreciated, and you can see it happen. I always took a percentage, because it's kind of like if you give away merch for free, it's going to end up outside in the snow. People don't value things that money's not involved with. You know, that's why you never give anything away at a merch table. If you want to give away a button or a sticker, make sure they're buying something to get that. It's just the psychology of it. So.
Well, speaking of working with babies, especially too, how much of it right now is, or when you're managing a young man, how much of it is psychological, keeping them together?
Oh yeah.
You know, how to work with each other.
Trying to keep them so they're not completely drunk when they're playing. I mean, that was definitely, I mean, keep them away from the bar when they were playing loud. It was just like, oh crap, you know.
The psychology working with your friends?
Yeah, I mean, I kind
You
of,
know things that no one else does.
lots of things. Yes. Yeah, I was kind of given like this weird title by those that were close, of like den mother or the cat herder or whatever, because, you know, things would get dramatic and it just would kind of blow over after a few days, but kind of being in the middle of it definitely is a little different. That's why I would say that my position as far as management goes is probably much less typical than what people would expect. It's just dudes that I like, that I'm friends with, that I enjoy their music, I like what they're doing. It's just people that I want to help. I have a full-time gig where I get a paycheck, and I kind of look at it as, you know, like my casual professional business type of thing. Like, it's not anything I need to worry about every second of the day. When I'm interested in working on it, I can. Or if the demand's there, depending on the day.
Well, and Dana, when you go from managing your friend or someone you know to big national sites, and maybe you haven't even met all of them, or at least don't know them all well.
Well,
Does it feel less personal?
Well, you know, you build the relationships. To be honest, from Starlight Hades, I jumped on the road with Skid Row for 4 years. So I was, you know, their multi-platinum band, and it was definitely day and night difference. But you're still building that relationship and building trust with an artist. And, you know, that was just what an experience, because they grew up in the 80s. I did too, but not in my 20s. So dealing with that type of mindset, you know, there was still a lot of babysitting and making sure they're not getting too wasted in their shows, which sometimes happens, you know? And it was just a matter of, you know, even though they're much older than me, they're still looking at me as a leader and leading them towards the right decisions on the road or in the booking side of it. Because at that time, they were booking agents, or a client of our booking agent too.
Does the manager have to be smarter than the artist? Well, and
Problem solving.
what I mean is that your friends came to you because they saw something in you that you could handle it. Same with you. Do they, you know, does the artist recognize that there's something here that we don't have, that we can't do, that we, is it necessary, or can a band manage themselves, or do they need someone on the outside?
What I found when I was at TRG was the bands that were the best at business were not as talented music-wise. If they had one aspect figured out, the other one was lacking.
Okay.
So I don't know, that's kind of a generalization, but, I mean, no, I mean, like, Remote Model, they're crazy smart. The guitarist is in Spain right now getting his PhD, and together they do 9 languages. So they were really fun to take on the radio, to do radio interviews, because they had so much to talk about and they were so well traveled. But as far as trying to convince them that playing every weekend with your friends' bands and the same band is not the way to go, took a little bit. It took probably about a year for them to hand over all the booking to me. And then once they did, they realized what I was talking about and how, it could be better. As some people say, it's not friend business, it's show business, Not all of them are friends happy.
This is our 4th panelist. Dennis, please introduce yourself.
Hi, Dennis. I'm not Dennis if I'm not late, right, Carrie?
Right.
I'm Dennis Pulaski, and I'm honored to be here. I will talk probably more than you guys need to hear, so I'm going to start listening.
Okay. I'll just run down a couple of your artists before
I'm working with Meat Puppets. I also work with Phil Solom from the Rembrandts. I've worked with a local band called Quiet Drive. I do work for Brian Jones on Massacre, and I help with a ton of other bands through phone calls or smaller advice, lesser management matters, because I also practice law.
Okay. All right, let's switch gears a little bit and talk about some more specifics. Revenue streams. Whereas for the revenue streams, we're pretty much, you make an album, you sell it, you go on tour. And those are your 2 major revenue streams. Now that those aren't as strong, or at least the sales isn't as strong, lots of different ones. There's some streaming, licensing, commercials. What, in your experience, are you finding revenue streams that are working, not working right now? How are the bands making money? If they're
Want me to jump in?
Sure.
They haven't changed. Can I use the words like BS?
You just say whatever you want.
It's BS to think you can give things away and make money. You have to make good stuff and sell it still. And where the industry's got its ass kicked is at the level of trying to help artists along with deals that were very common in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and a little bit into the last decade. But you're kidding yourself if you think you can give music away and make money. You've got to use that model. But if you're not making and selling your music, there's no hope of starting out at the true independent to the next bridge level. You might as well make the prettiest sounding thing you can find, the prettiest bandmates you can find, and pitch that crap to the people in Sony and the Universal world. Because otherwise, there is no change. You still make your money off of physical goods. Small as that may be, that's where you find your real fan base. Those people still will buy recordings, particularly. It's funny to me. You can sell cassettes and vinyl and CDs, so what's changed? Other than people can get your music around the globe. If it's good, I'll tell you what's changed. There's so many more people doing this. And there's so many more places putting things on that you don't have the restriction you used to have, which in itself built bands. But you got all these other tools, so good music sells.
Does streaming count as giving music away, or would you put that under to make a little money?
I think the coolest thing on earth is YouTube. I'm 50 years old, I've never seen anything more badass in my life. It lets you see all sorts of music from all sorts of era. I think it counts. I'm not saying don't stream, I'm just saying this idea it's a revenue stream, it's not. It's MTV, okay? Except now there aren't record stores where you were one of the 30 videos selected for heavy saturation for 12 months, It's hard, it's no less hard than it used to be. It's just that there's so many more people in this much less restricted marketplace. If that makes sense.
Yeah. So, Dan, what are a lot of artists, I guess, are almost classic rock now. What are their strongest revenues for this? Is it still record? Do they sell back catalog, or more just about touring now?
Well, I've seen a lot of, being on the road with Skid Row, merchandising was a big thing for them, and they always wanted the more we had on the merch table, the more opportunity there was to sell not one piece, but maybe 3 pieces. The more we had, the more to sell. Is what I found when we were selling stuff at the shows. People still like autographs, so we would do crazy things like drum heads with autographs on them, or stickers with autographs on them, pictures with autographs on them. Those nostalgic bands like that, people still want that kind of stuff. I don't know if that would necessarily migrate into the baby bands quite yet. But I think merchandising was a big thing. I mean, today with the IY generation, buying music online, whether you buy a single or you buy an album, I mean, that's still a small revenue stream. It's not going to make your bills by any means, but it's still going to help. But having the actual, I don't know, I'd probably be on this one up here, but I don't buy CDs as much as I used to, or albums, not any of that stuff. It's more, this generation I think is more prone to go watch it on YouTube or listen to it on Spotify or Pandora or buy an MP3 before they buy an album.
Or buy original merch.
Or original merch.
Like Hazen 3000, because he often performs with the gas mask on, we would sell the gas mask, and I got him to start signing them, and we were selling those for $25.
Oh, Brett Michaels?
So,
Do you want his
That's a local
guitar,
artist.
or do you want his hat, or do you want his shirt he wore on stage? Maybe even the jeans he wore on stage, get him autographed. I mean, they auction that stuff off at the shows, you know, and he does that quite a bit. He also has a revenue stream with meet and greets on his bus. $100 a ticket, $150 a ticket. That's where he generates a lot of revenue.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know what's been said, I don't know what is yet to be said. I'll tell you where the revenue streams come if you guys are in bands or looking to work with bands. Get your band to another town and find another band that is doing well and hits it off with you, or go catch bands that are playing here in town on an early phase of their tour. And again, what's wrong with the internet? Because all it does is give you info. I lost my phone the other night in New York, and hi Steve, and I was going to go get it. And then, because of the iPhone function that you can find it, and it wasn't far from where I lost it. And then I'm at a friend's house who is in the band Ween while they're on hiatus. And he was like, hey, before you go over there, we could take my car, but let's use the internet to see exactly where this is. And we looked, and it was a gangbanger's place. So, you know, 8 years ago, I would have gotten killed today. Because I just pulled this thing up. Well, there's that same information for bands out there, for the pitfalls, as well as the other things. But primarily, I think the thing you can trust is looking at, if I presume everyone here is eager to find something that can start generating first phone calls from clubs and fans, because that's what we're talking about. Otherwise, we'd be at South by Southwest in front of people that just start spending corporate expense accounts. We're not doing that here. Everyone in here is probably eager to start up. And the best step I've seen is get your own band selling tickets, okay? And then start swapping with bands 400 miles, 300 miles, 200 miles away, and swap gigs. That's where your resources and time and thought should be expended, is finding something similar to what you're doing, a concentric circle away. And the other advice I give is sell tickets on Mondays and Tuesdays, not just Fridays and Saturdays, because lots of clubs have lots of openings on Fridays or Mondays and Tuesdays. And Friday, Saturday, Sunday, you're up against the big ticket sellers or the big draws or the big nights out. You're up against college events. Stay away from those things if you're starting out. If we're talking revenue stream, the first revenue stream you should really count on, I know there's exceptions. The kid down in Owatonna, why can't I think of his name? Alcid. He did a great job. Think what he did. He took that song and he made it as close to the Postal Service or Death Cab, Postal Service, I think. He admits this, if you catch him in a frank conversation. He made that song as close to some other band song that he could, that had cachet and cred, and then he put it out there because he knew these guys were a once every 6-year band, and there was a hunger for that. And he just said, there's a void, here's my song, and he just went around to as many leads as he could get from Postal Service, and he shot fans of theirs. He profiled everything. He had the time. No one was calling him for work. No one was begging him to get in to do session. He had time, and he used the tool everyone in this room has, connectivity, and he found people that liked this music, and they bought that song, and before you knew it, he had 30,000 sales made, and now he's getting phone calls. So that's one way to do it.
Well, so what does he need a manager for?
At some point, oh, that's a good question. At some point, you're gonna need a manager to tell you who's lying, who's not, okay? You manage on any number of levels. You're gonna be managing the band members' egos, their clashes, their desires to do something bigger than they're allotted in the band, their desire to be bigger than they are. Okay, so that's one level of management. Then the next level is you've got to manage people getting to and from someplace without losing everything, you know, and finding places. It's the worst job in the world, yet it's also enjoyable when it's done right.
Terry, before we get upstream, do the Goonies have anything upstream?
Band camp, mostly,
Have
yeah.
you ever seen any, I mean, do you look at the numbers? Has there ever been anything generated for, you know, a decent local band for country?
Not really.
You have to be.
There's Spotify, I mean, yeah, they're on Spotify, they're on, I think, maybe iTunes Radio. It's very minimal. Like, the payback on that is kind of like the toss-up in the band's mind of like, all right, do we want to pay to put it on these services where we're getting 0.002 cents? You know?
What about sales? How are CDs?
CDs, so T-shirts, CDs, that type of thing.
They're still selling
Yeah,
CDs?
yeah.
Okay, excellent. And do they tour much?
Not too often, no. Good is currently are on an indefinite hiatus since December, so.
The hard thing with merchandising is having capital to start that business, you know. I used to, and maybe a friend out there, maybe will help some of you guys start out with that and do a little bit of investment swap, you know, where I was doing that with Scarlet Haze. I'd invest a handful of money, but I didn't make profit on the sales. I just made profit on my investment and got a little kickback for helping them do that investment. And that really helped them a lot because they didn't have the capital to invest into t-shirts or sweatshirts and whatnot. So it did help. And we were able to keep it all within the camp where you're getting the money and you're just reinvesting it, which is really helpful.
Have artists' goals changed as the industry has passed? I mean, it used to be, when I was here 10 years ago, album fans, it was still mostly, you know, fame and fortune, but, you know, when you say what's the least amount of success you accept, you can say Weezer or Foo Fighters. But now, I hear a lot more of, I just want to be able to play music and pay my rent and just live a middle-class life. And I don't know if you can do that anymore.
Everybody's different. You know, some bands want to tour. That's what they think is really fun. Some just want to put out one album. And that's what you have to find out. If you like a band and you want to go into management, you have to sit down and see if your goals are aligned. Is this going to be a band that only wants to be out there for a year? Is this going to be a band that's going to work with you and is actually going to listen and is going to work hard? Otherwise, it's a waste of your time. And, I mean, I personally get emotionally invested because I like supporting artists. And I don't have, you know, the courage to be up on stage, so I like being behind the scenes.
Well, speaking of emotionally invested, how many artists are too many on the roster? Can you know, is it better to just have one or two that you can focus your attention on? Or if you grow and get more successful, should you have?
I did two at once, and the annoying thing was I didn't book the shows that they were doing, but they kept playing on the same night. So I was running back and forth locally to the venues, and that was a little frustrating. But they have totally different, you know, audiences. But
I think you could have more artists on your roster if the artist didn't expect a whole lot. You know, if they were just doing it for fun and here and there, whatever, you can juggle 10 acts. But if you got two artists that really want to dive in and get to work and do it, that's a lot to handle.
and that are putting out records at the same time. You know,
Then you hope they can get along and tour together. Because
Yeah.
the other thing.
it does help out with getting shows and getting different shows, because that definitely happened with my two artists. One would get a show and I'd get the other one on the bill.
Because they didn't fit, they were.
No, not at all, it was just because I knew it, I knew the show was happening, and I was like, oh, you need another artist, here, let's put this one on. I mean, that's how it happened.
Sometimes that's great though.
Yeah.
Across-
Oh,
That's
totally. yeah.
amazing when it
Yeah.
happens. It's the best, because then they start bitching to each other than to you. You know, then one will tell you who's bitching.
It's better to have artists that are different genres, because then they're not competing for the same things, and then they're not getting, jealous.
Right.
Well, and it also gives the fans have a chance to find something that they might not have found otherwise when you put different genres together.
Yes. So true. I miss that bands, I think too much in this era is, and I say find someone that sounds like you or is doing something like you, and that's helpful at the beginning, but I think the emo scene and a little bit before that showed me you're only going to be given 3 years, and then people get tired of that cycle of music if it gets that popular. Whereas I think a lot of the classic rock acts and before, those that led, first learned to play, okay? 8 hours of music or whatever a night. And those opportunities are still out there. Someone's hardcore enough to develop, but they learn cover songs, and they would cover 10 or 12 years of music, and I'm telling you, when you do that, you're going to learn all sorts of different styles. But how many is too many? Depends on the maturity of them. I hate to say this, I'm not bashing them, but they really are organisms that require a lot of attention, and the more they think you're giving to someone else, the more they're going to want just to keep you feeling that they're feeling that you've engaged them right. Can I give you a model of what I like to work with? An artist who there's one leader in the band, it's clear, the band guys defer to him, they don't step out of line, and you and him get along as manager. That is the greatest scenario possible, and you should strive for that. And if you see anything less than that, that doesn't mean give up on the act. If you love them and you can work with them all, but you are going to be now managing 4 bands rather than 1 if there's 4 people struggling for that attention or a leadership role. Divide that number of people in that band striving for that voice, that's how many bands you're managing. They all politic. If you can get in the other situation, there's no reason you can't have 5 to 7 bands. I work totally by myself with my wife, helping on occasion. The other guy busting balls is your booking agent and the publicist, and if you're in a good situation, the record label. So you can take on more, but if you're just starting someone and you're incubating something, watch it, because they're exceptionally needy. By definition, they haven't yet gotten past the length of time at this that they realize some bands get it. We're not going to be working this year. Not because we don't want to, but because the marketplace doesn't have anything for us.
And even 20 years after the fact of starting up, it's still that way. Having one band leader is better than having a 3-headed horseman
Yep.
that has 3 different egos and 3 different opinions to try to get one simple booking done.
Yeah. Guest list done.
Well, and when you say we're not going to work this year, or we're on hiatus, or can you do that anymore? I thought, can you leave a year or 2 between albums, or do you have to constantly be releasing that to stay relevant?
When you're new.
Especially local, when there's more competition than ever. Is more better, or?
It depends. If this indefinite hiatus stays indefinite, I mean, we'll see as far as that goes. I think the local scene, just in general, like that's pretty much been my focus. Granted, the bands have gotten out of town, but I'm more familiar with Minneapolis, St. Paul, and like how the venues operate here and how the scene kind of works. And really, Minneapolis and just like the media in general tend to churn out bands usually a year is kind of your window to make your impression, to get involved with, whatever the big thing is that year, the big event, to get booked for that thing. You can maybe drag it out another year or 2, but you're going to really get, at least from my experience, the most attention within that first year of like, hey, check out these guys. And then it kind of will snowball if it means to.
I'm trying to explain to the bands that if you play it 1 year, they're not going to ask you back the next year.
Right.
And that's not the manager's fault, that's just how it goes.
Yeah.
I think it's important as new bands just starting up to keep new music coming, even if it's only 2 or 3 songs. For example, one of our acts, you know, they didn't put out a full album. They put out 3 different chapters. They're 5-song chapters, and they're selling those independent records. But it's showing an impact. It's keeping them out on the road longer, getting them more quality gigs. But I think, you know, as a young artist, I think keeping it, if you want to stay in it, longevity, keep putting out music and keep making the music relevant to today, because it's just changing ever so fast.
You know, another thing, I saw this some years ago and showed it to some guy, but I was like, look at these charts and look at these guys who's someone's working with someone else. There's so much now of that happening, particularly in Minneapolis, St. Paul, cross-genre working. There's so many, the collectives here in this city and the people that, you just watch what they're doing, because those guys started with 0 fans, friends, 0 fans. And why have they taken off? And it's because they have paid attention to modern music consumption and modern music trends, and those are important. If your idea is to do what you said, which is, I want to do this and pay rent, maybe even lease a car, maybe even have, you know, something to show after doing all these things, it's there for that. What's not there is record labels giving bands enough advances that you can substitute your own revenue channels for what the bands used to, or the labels used to give you, but then they would take 90% or more of what you were getting. Now, the balance is you can keep close to 50 or 60% in the right deals. But I kid you not, it really, to me, if you're gonna, if we're talking band as opposed to recording artists, road work. And then, depending on how much press you're getting, which thank God if you get any when you're starting out, but it depends if you've got a story in the band. And if you do, the press doesn't, I work with the Meat Puppets, and I don't know how many stories they have, books worth, right? There's nothing left for the press to write about that's new under the sun for them. So we have to tag albums a little differently. But I've got other artists where I'm like, put something out twice a year. Let them see how productive you are. That's a story, okay? You kind of gotta let your publicist also tell you, you know, I'm not getting bites on this. Or I won't expect to get bites, okay? And then I love this idea that we've got a full album ready to go, but we're only gonna give a third away. Develop some anticipation or hunger in it. And then that doesn't stop you from putting that whole album together at the end of this cycle. But yes, it's a great way to capture more people. I just think people like to get the idea that we're gonna get results. And so a record's gonna give me results, or a tour's gonna give me results. No, about 10 of them are, honestly. Unless you're lucky, you know, and a fluke hits. But that's what's fun about this. None of us know when that's coming. And they show up with some, it's like gambling, I suppose. You know, people win to make enough other people throw things at it. But it can be controlled gambling. And I just think you really should be creative when the creativity is in you, and then let management or other people, label people or publicists, bounce ideas off of you as to what the marketplace might be for that. If that can be penetrated.
I think a good example of that in the top 40 hits is Macklemore. Being able to do that all on his own as an independent artist. You really have to be creative and you know, I don't know his whole story, but having the right people drag you down those right paths. And a publicist, he could be your manager. I mean, managers wear so many hats that they would just try to help you do anything and everything.
Am I missing anybody's questions that I've got my back? Yeah, absolutely.
It's interesting that you brought up labels and that they take 50%. At this point, I mean, the question I think everybody has is, are they even relevant anymore? And
Very much so, because I think what's happened is you've got labels identified with particular tastes now. So you may have, remember I was saying, okay, streaming, There was, the Brian Jonestown guys were well known, but at a weird point in time, they came to town and they sold out, the 400, their first show. And I was like, okay, so you guys are probably gonna make about another 500 or 600 tonight in CD sales. And I turned around, the guys giving them away for free. And I was like, what are you doing? You know, the next show isn't gonna be 300, it's gonna be free. In Milwaukee or something. You were lucky, this is Minneapolis. And he's like, because they'll remember this. And there was a genius to that. He got lucky and he was, you know, part of a film that became a worldwide, on and on, more popular than Woodstock in some ways today, in today's currency. But he totally understood you give away music. But he was on this label called Bomb, okay? And Bomb put out only certain taste of music that you knew if you were on that label, it was probably a reflection of other artists, other people like. So in a way, the label was its own tastemaker, you know? You knew if that guy chose to put out a record, he liked it, you liked his other stuff, you probably didn't like this. And that works, it always has, still does. Yeah, that's a great. I mean, those guys, you know, they're rhymesayers or, I love this seeing Steve in this room because I saw him personally usher that band from kids playing parties to kids playing big rooms. And he had a lot to do that, and he can tell you, you know, it was all about, in that regard, you're in the city, there's tons of radio stations, there's tons of college campuses. People talk about why I love living in Minneapolis. I grew up in Rochester, but I worked in California, and I came back here, and it was like, this city has more colleges, more live venues, more radio, all within a 20-minute drive, worst case scenario. You have 2 music schools. You are not lacking for outlets here. You're lacking for discipline and maybe creativity. You know?
Dan, are your bands still on, make all that big little deal still? Doesn't matter?
Just Kid Row has that new deal, Megaforce Records. But other than that, Frontiers Records out of Italy has produced The Last Warrant, the Winger album coming out, LA Guns was on Cleopatra. So there are still some labels out there, I just don't know how much label support they actually get. I think it may just be a name on the CD, I don't know. You know, at this point. It's not very often that we find label support for bookings. There's not a lot of that, or for tours necessarily.
Megaforce is great. I brought the Meat Puppets to them, even though they had Anthrax, Metallica leanings, right? But they also put out a Willie Nelson record, and they also put out a Levon Helm record. And they really, she's absolutely right that, you know, sometimes it's a name on it, but here's 4 people that run this label, a husband, wife that own it, and I was just there Friday, and they have interns, and they distribute other bands' records, but they're so plugged in, and they're so friendly, and they do want to see bands selling 10, 15,000 or more records per album cycle at a minimum, because that should cover the recording costs. And then after that, they will spend on publicity, they will spend on press, and also on manufacturing. They make the coolest. Like, our band's kind of arty, and they put together the gatefold and really cool stuff, and put your vinyl out and colored vinyl. They love doing that stuff if they know that you're gonna go out and get up at 8 a.m. and meet with radio. And I'm sure all these acts have friends out there that remember, you know, who these bands are, and they love seeing them come in, love seeing them helping them. So I don't say the record label is dead. I say that development model where labels used to help develop bands. The Jayhawks being an example from here in town, run 2 or 3 labels, you know. Every major label wanted them at some point. None of them clicked, but they were that close always. It was like, they got songs on radio. They toured, they were recommended, they were They were other bands' favorite bands, you know? All these things, those days sadly are gone if you're going to rely on a record label. All those opportunities are still there if you befriend bands and the people around them and do something for them at some point before asking for a favor.
Other questions?
Is there a good way as a band manager to like help with the like creatively like I don't know, inspire or like motivate the band?
Are you talking about their music, or are you talking
No,
about?
like is something a band manager can do like creatively to like help.
I totally helped with merch. I mean, when it came to picking out and helping with the designs and the colors and the styles of the stuff and what we would sell. because
Men don't know how
that's-
to get girls' clothes, I tell you that.
Some managers are musicians. The replacements managers, Darren Hill played in bands, lots of guys like that. If you've got music credentials, I don't, so I would shut up before offering any opinion at all. But if you've got credentials and you're a musician, you know what manager really means is you grab a hold of their vision and you can keep the vision positive best you can, and you can deal with rejection and help them deal with rejection. That's the criteria I think goes into management.
But when you're managing your friends, I imagine you're in the studio, you're there for every bit of it, and I imagine you're giving them feedback. So there is, you are influencing the creative process, but only because they're asking.
Yeah, I guess it kind of, like I said, my situation is kind of unique in the sense that I'm friends with these guys, start working with them. I've lived with them for most of the time that I've worked with them, so the practice space is also in the same house I live in, so I'm pretty close to kind of what's happening. And I guess it's kind of more like if they want your feedback, I guess you kind of dabble around that pretty carefully, like, hey, that's pretty cool, but
Keep your toe, watch that line.
yeah, and just know that, you know, they're the musicians and you're the organized one.
I would explain though, if they were making a 7-minute song, it's never gonna be a radio play, so cut it down. But usually they have a producer, and that's the producer's job. I do remember being in the studio, they got a good deal over like Christmas break, doing at the terrarium for like 3 days, and they finished a record in that time and didn't sleep. And I suggested that the vocals could actually be understood. It's a little bit more clarity in that, and they listened to, you know, some of the things that I said, but I definitely didn't overstep when it came to arrangements or anything like that. It was like the length of songs and being able to understand it. But packaging and photo shoots, I was definitely involved in all that and checked out what they were wearing, but I do that on the side too, so they trusted me in that regard. It's just whatever the band will let you do and whatever you are capable of doing. If you have to know what your skill set is and not try to make yourself good at something that you're not good at and give advice about something that you don't understand, you know?
I think bands will look and see, what do you internally, you know as a manager when they need internal input, like, but if they see you focused on the external things that they don't like doing or don't know how to do, you'll get a lot more freedom on the other stuff. But if all you're doing is managing their affairs, then you're another band member. What are you really doing for, you know? And I just try and stay away from all things creative just because that's not my background. But I'm telling you, there's many managers in here as there are heads. And really it's down to if the artist trusts you with input, you know? Now sometimes they turn something in and the record label will tell you that sounds flat or that's not mixed properly. Boy, those are the worst because that's their baby and you're going back to them, you know? And you're asking, those are the hardest parts because I don't want them pissed off at the label either. I want everyone, once you're in, everyone's on your team. Once they're on your team, that's good and bad things, but you're not going anywhere if all these internal clashes are all over the place. Someone comes out of that deal unhappy, whether it's the label or the artist, and both can stink up a room faster than you know what. And really it's a manager's job to, in that setting to try to keep that from happening and certainly not stoke it. I think there's a lot of great managers out there that have musical background and they have something to say. And then what you should do is learn, ask your other buddies. People around there will tell you, this is what I think of this project. Get that feedback too, you know. But I leave it now, from my standpoint too, I wait for someone else to say something, and then I try and figure out the best way to convey it. If it's creative.
Aaron?
Would management ever suggest a producer for an album, for an upcoming album project?
Lots.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
And what influence do you have to do that?
Get them together. If the producer's really interested, they can come and see a show and a rehearsal and hang out with the people, because they're about to spend some time together, and you don't want on the 5th day, 8th day, some crap to flare up where they just butt heads. They're going to anyhow, but they should spend time ahead of time, and the guy should know, producer, he or she should know what the music's about, how the band plays live, how they play not off stage, and how they work a room.
What about if you think that you're selecting a producer that can change the sound a little bit because you think that it might be advantageous to go a certain direction, which would influence the choice of the producer? Is that something that you might do as management? Or?
It comes up, and I would say let the producer fight that battle.
Yeah.
Let him get in there and say why this would be cool. If he's got a bit of a track, I keep saying he or she, mostly because they are he's, but if they can get in there and sell, you know, based on their history and their vision, sometimes artists are dry. Like, they feel they have a song, but they can't get it out. I think that's probably the most important relationship, making a record, hands down, is the producer and the trust the artist has with them. But the best thing you can do is if you think someone out there, first you gotta make sure they like the band. And then if they do, one thing bands like is feeling wanted. So have the guy preferably come to their town or show of theirs and let them see it and let them share the excitement of that evening. And then talk about future possibilities. I've done it a lot. And then again, I have artists that don't want outside production. They want to do the record themselves, and that can work too if they've got the experience.
I keep thinking of Bob Dylan wanting to fire Lanois at a certain point along the way.
I thought about that today too. I really honestly did, because I'm thinking about another artist where I'd like Lanois involved. And the thing about that is both are headstrong, and I think that record is Oh Mercy, right? Maybe it's a great record, but does Bob ever play anything off of it? Not much, you know? And he bitches about it. And I was like, too bad, because there was some cool stuff on that, you know? That's Bob Dylan.
Yeah, and you know the artist might just have that vision they have and they don't want to stray from it, and where someone coming in might want to take them a different way. So you just gotta be there before you build it from the beginning and see if they're on the same page with the visions of the music. It might just not be that.
Rick Rubin's one of the obviously most popular and successful producers, and I've seen him at work a couple of times. In fact, I saw him at work by not being at work. He wasn't even there. And the stories about that are legion, you know, that he goes in and he runs sessions without being there. Why? Because he's so good ahead of time figuring out what the artist should be doing, and he tells him, and he gets out of there. So when he is there, his words count more. But now some bands hate that. AC/DC hated it, and but the Chili Peppers and these other bands are like, he comes in and straightens out things that need to be straightened out, otherwise he's not there. And so when he is there, he's accorded more room in the room, they like to say. But Dylan's different that way. It's funny you brought that up, because I was just thinking about that record today. And I love it, and I'd love to see it played more. I'm wondering.
Do you ever see contracts signed between bands and producers?
Yeah, I handle that quite a bit. Most producers now if you're coming at it representing the producer, I like to ask for, if they're really doing a lot of work and not getting paid, then share some publishing, which isn't money that's there, but may come out of the process, right? Are you asking I think there always should be paper between them, because payment is either, so many ways to approach this. You can pay producer per song flat rate, and then that's his compensation. Or they take what are points, but of course with records not selling, those are worthless. And real income from recordings, other than what bands can make on the road, at point of sale at a show, is in publishing syncs. And so a lot of the producers I've talked to, they want to see that reflected, you know, and it can shorten the deal a lot. We have seen producer deals go longer than record deals, you know, covering contingencies. I like to see them a page and a half. Half of the page saying, I've read everything carefully and here's my signature.
Yeah, I got a question, bringing it back to the band management thing. You three on joint, have brought up some pretty big band names, but also some band names that are from the past as well. Bret Michaels, I really would consider a comer. He's been around for a while, he's been on practice, he's got big names, he's making a lot of money. If you, with Meat Puppets and stuff like that, yet again another name, but if you were to say, yeah, bring Meat Puppets at any club, you got to fill. Not really, you know, then you got to work with them as a manager, but you seem to have more of a realistic take it from how do I get into it. I mean, you're working with artists that already have money and can expend resources into their art. You're working with a band that produces in the same room or in the same house as you, which is where I guess, you know, how much investment of time are you guys doing to find someone that has never been heard of before?
I talk to them every day. They find me. I'm happy that they do. I would caution never to live with them. No, but you know what? I'm saying that, but I'm 50, and you know, I'm saying younger guys, yes. You know what you want is someone that's going to just, I think I said it earlier, gets that there's going to be rejection and looks past it and goes, it's not the rejection that matters, it's that you found a way to deal with it after it happens, okay? But younger bands, I've said this, I think, the very first thing out of my mouth, and I told you guys I would talk a lot, it's just in my nature. I've said what young bands need to do is do the work themselves so that there's a reason to have a manager. If they're just starting out and they expect a manager to give them what they don't already have, good luck with that, folks.
So how does a manager, what would it take for you to be approached and say, I'd like to manage my band, yeah, I'd like to use them, the guys are okay. These guys don't have any money, but, you know, and especially a younger band manager who's trying to get into it, how much are they expected to put in their own resources, and how long can they really honestly expect to do something pro bono, which it sounds like it is, until they end up in a position like the three of you are in as well with your.
I never put my own money in. And I wasn't going to, and I made sure that, what I'm talking about is Revolve Model, because they were the first one. And I've been in the industry enough to figure out what should be done, but I wish I would have made a 3-ring binder of everything that I did. And I had a full-time job at the time doing music licensing. And I said, you know, if I ever lose this job, I'm going to have to stop managing you guys, because I would use my vacation time to go on tour with them. Because they'd be doing their homework in the back because they were in college or grad school, and I would have to drive a lot of the times too. And then when I did get laid off from that job because people stopped buying CDs, I stopped managing them because I was like, I actually have to make more money than this. I did make money, but I had their tours in the black, and I always said, like, a band should never, that's my double negative, but they should always be making some money. The money that they make should go into the band fund, and then that band fund should have enough in it to pay for all of your merch and all of your record sales. And if it's not, then you have to look at what you're doing, because you should be able to make more money. And thinking out of the box as far as revenue sources for playing out, I had them doing museum shows. Museums have money, colleges have money. When you're playing a local show, a lot of times the bands will get $50 if you're lucky and maybe sell 2 CDs. But the colleges, the minimum is $1,000. And there won't even be anyone there. But they've got money in that fund that has to pay the bands, and even though you're not playing in front of anyone, you do those college shows before you're going to go on a tour. And that'll pay for the gas, and that'll pay for a couple hotel rooms and whatever else.
I think,
What would you expect to make, I guess, what would a band have to be doing annually or whatever to qualify
For him to manage them?
any?
Well, he's different because he's a lawyer and he works with bigger bands, but if you want to just get into managing, then you have to start off with what you have to start off with, because a band that's successful isn't gonna work with somebody that doesn't have any background.
I worked for a year with no commission if I liked the band, to answer the question.
Okay.
I don't expect them to make money. I think me taking money from nothing, even though there is something there, is, you know what, I want their trust, so that when the bigger decisions come and the bigger things come, they've seen that I've been as committed or more committed than they have. Yeah, so I would have been in the situation you're talking about, and even before, you know, I thought about this. It just, my reasoning, I guess I'd like to use the approach of empathy. What would I expect if I was them? This guy's working his butt off and not getting paid. They want to work harder for you, okay? That's what you got to find out. And if you don't see that there, I cannot make someone motivate themselves. You can take a motivated person and more motivate them, but I can't take a dreamer and motivate him if that's not part of his core being. That's what I'm looking for.
Okay.
Yeah, if I totally love the band and love the music, they're still gonna have to convince me why to take the time out of my day to work for them. I mean, you have to be willing to put everything on the table and do the job and the work yourself before you can expect someone else to come and bring their time and efforts and energy into something. If you don't have a passion for it, why would they want to have a passion for it? So if you don't necessarily want to work hard and do the legwork from the ground up for a while, you may not find the person that's going to just come in and say, okay, let me do it. Because you're, as an independent artist, you all work hard. We all work hard as professionals. I mean, we just want to be able to give you the respect as you would give us the respect too. So.
And even if you're taking a percentage, my joke was that I was making like negative $5 an hour because you're putting in so much time, but you're only getting a percentage off of whatever you decide you're getting a percentage off of what they're making. So for me, it was just.
And her percentage could probably range from 5 to 20%.
10 or 20.
Yeah.
I think I started off at 10 and then went to 20.
Right. And when you're only making $50 a show, that's $5. That gets
And you're there for 5 hours loading in the gear. You're there till 2 o'clock in the morning doing the settling. I think it's just to show that you deserve the respect, that you're on the line as you're part of this too. But I mean, I never made any money to live. That's why I always had a full-time job. But I loved it. I learned a ton.
Hold on, man. We are absolutely out of time, so we're going to take one more question and that'll be it.
I just had an easy, simple question. How do you secure that payment or whatever from the venue?
It's from the venue or from the artist as a manager?
Well, from the venue, like with a new artist or just starting.
Generally, just an agreement, like, that's either been made prior to the show, preferably. Like, hey, this is your percentage for the night, or depending on the venue, some places will just do, like, this is what it is, no matter what the turnout is. And then it's generally, at the end of the night, meet up with a tour guide, owner, how you doing?
And when you're on
Good,
the small end, just starting up, there probably won't be any paperwork. It's probably just a verbal agreement.
Yeah.
When you
Email.
start getting into $100,000 bookings, of course, there's going to be paperwork and contracts and riders and all that.
Okay.